love a fresh set. I love a fresh set. Today we have another true crime episode, but I want to preface, I'm going to put a warning somewhere on this screen. This video does contain sensitive topics, just an FYI, but let's get started. In January 2011, 27-year-old Ellen Greenberg was found unresponsive inside the Philadelphia apartment she shared with her fiancé. The apartment door had been locked from the inside. Ellen had sustained over 20 sharp force injuries. The Philadelphia medical examiner initially ruled her death a homicide, but that ruling was later changed to indicate self-inflicted injuries. The decision raised serious concerns, not only from Ellen's loved ones, but from independent experts, investigators, and advocates, and it continues to be questioned to this day. Ellen Greenberg was a first-grade teacher, a daughter, and a friend. She gave her time and energy to everyone around her without expecting anything back, said her best friend, Allison Stern. She was beautiful, had a gorgeous smile, amazing hair, but even more than that, she was kind and generous. Her mother, Sandy Greenberg, recalled, "We were so proud of her. She was joyful and fun-loving. I couldn't wait to get up in the morning and be her mom." After graduating from college, Ellen moved to the Manayunk neighborhood of Philadelphia, a lively area popular with students and young professionals. She was working as a teacher and living independently. To friends and family, it was clear that Ellen wanted love, marriage, and a family of her own. She was introduced to a man named Sam Goldberg through a mutual connection. He worked in media and was on a work trip in Charleston, South Carolina at the time. They began talking over FaceTime, and after about a month, Sam flew Ellen down to visit, something her cousin described as out of character for her. But she went, and she enjoyed the trip. Not long after, they became a couple. By year 3, they were engaged. On the day of the incident, January 26, 2011, schools in Philadelphia were closing early due to an incoming snowstorm. Ellen left work and returned to the apartment. Later that afternoon, a friend tried to contact her, but Ellen wasn't answering her phone. According to Sam Goldberg, he left the apartment to go to the gym. When he returned, the front door to their unit was locked and secured with a swing latch from the inside. He said Ellen wasn't answering and he was unable to get in. Sam went to the front desk and said he had been locked out. Staff told him they no longer accompanied tenants to their doors and advised him to continue trying to contact Ellen while they reached out to maintenance. A neighbor in apartment 602 later recalled hearing a man's voice in the hallway. He cracked open his door and saw Sam pacing and knocking on the door to unit 603, which was their unit, appearing distressed, trying to get Ellen to open the door. The neighbor assumed it was a disagreement between the couple, but noted that Sam seemed visibly concerned. Sam eventually returned to the front desk, appearing more agitated. He reportedly said, "I need to get into the effing unit." When asked if something was wrong with Ellen, he responded, "I don't know," before stating that he was going to break the door down. At some point, Sam forced his way into the apartment. Moments later, he placed a 911 call. On the call, Sam reported that he had returned from the gym, and when he came back up, the door to their apartment was latched. His fiancée was inside and she wasn't answering, so after about a half hour, he decided to break it down, and he found his fiancée on the floor, unresponsive, and covered in blood, saying, "I see her now, just on the floor with blood, and she's not responding." The dispatcher instructed him to begin CPR and remove Ellen's shirt to check for injuries. Sam said the shirt wouldn't come off due to a zipper. He then said he noticed a knife and told the dispatcher it appeared Ellen had fallen on it. When asked where the knife was, he responded, "She fell District Attorney Guy D'Andrea later emphasized the importance of timeline in cases like this. He explains, "What we know is Sam Goldberg left the apartment at approximately 4:50 p.m. And per Sam's account, Ellen is alive and well and inside of that apartment. He is gone for about 38 to 40 minutes at the gym in the lobby area, which you can see on CCTV. He then gets into the elevator and goes to enter the apartment. And it's latched and you can only unlock it or lock it from the inside. And he's shouting into the apartment, he's slamming on the door, he's getting more and more irate. This, in combination with going up and down the elevators to the lobby, goes on for about an hour before he finally makes entry into the apartment and makes the 911 call. Ellen was found up against the cabinet in the corner, slunched down, blood all over her body and on the cabinets, where clearly her head had slid down the cabinet, and there is a knife sticking out of her chest. At around 6:40 p.m., the police, fire, and rescue are there, and detectives are there because this looks like it could be a homicide. After speaking with Sam, police detectives believed that Ellen was experiencing mental health struggles and called her injuries self-inflicted, and no further investigation was had. In the months leading up to her death, Ellen's family and friends did notice changes in her behavior. Her mother said Ellen appeared more stressed than usual and often cited her classroom as overwhelming. One colleague recalled walking into Ellen's classroom and seeing her in tears, saying she couldn't handle it. Ellen agreed to see a psychiatrist and was prescribed medication for anxiety. She tried a few options before finding one she said made her feel better. Even so, those close to her noticed a shift in her mood and demeanor starting in November or December. Her cousin Debbie said Ellen seemed off when they went shopping for wedding save-the-date cards in early December. She said the excitement Ellen once had seemed to be gone. Coworkers noticed that Ellen was preoccupied with grading, and one said she appeared to be obsessing over small details that normally wouldn't bother her. On the afternoon of January 26, 2011, the day of a major snowstorm, Ellen Greenberg was to police after the cause of death was changed. On January 27th, the day after Ellen's passing, friends and coworkers began to hear the news, and many were stunned by the suggestion that Ellen had taken her own life. One of her coworkers said she called Sam to offer condolences and was told directly she did this to herself. The coworker was taken aback, wondering how anyone could make that conclusion so quickly. Dr. D. Michelle Dupree, a forensic pathologist and consultant, later reviewed the case. She noted serious concerns with how the investigation was handled from the beginning. She explained that in typical investigations, the crime scene falls under the jurisdiction of law enforcement, but the body and anything immediately surrounding it fall under the jurisdiction of the medical examiner. Normally, the medical examiner would conduct an initial scene assessment to determine if the cause and manner of death were clear or if further investigation was needed. However, in Ellen's case, Dr. Dupree said the decision appeared rushed and was made largely based on statements at the scene rather than a full forensic evaluation. There were also critical gaps in documentation. For example, no crime scene photographs were taken of many of the wounds, especially those on Ellen's back, which weren't discovered until the autopsy. Ellen had sustained 20 sharp force injuries, including several stab wounds to the back of her neck and signs of blunt force trauma to the top of her head. Dr. Dupree noted that while hesitation wounds, shallow cuts often seen in self-inflicted cases, were present, the overall number and location of injuries were highly atypical for such cases. In particular, she emphasized that it's extremely rare for individuals to inflict wounds to their own back. Ellen's body was transported to the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's office, where Dr. Marlon Osborne initially ruled the manner of death as homicide. Back in Philadelphia, police returned to the apartment to continue their investigation, but by that time, the scene had already been professionally cleaned. In addition, Ellen's electronic devices had already been removed from the apartment and were not initially in police custody. They were later returned by James Schwartzman, Sam's uncle and a prominent Philadelphia attorney, after the ruling had been changed. Ellen's parents, Josh and Sandy Greenberg, initially trusted the investigative process and believed the professionals involved would uncover the truth. But on March 10th, 2011, just weeks after Ellen's death, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's office changed the manner of death to self-inflicted. The case was closed and no further investigation took place. For Ellen's family, the decision was devastating. Sandy said it took a long time to emerge from the darkness she was thrown into after losing her daughter, and she knew she couldn't move forward without understanding what had truly happened. In February 2013, Thomas Brennan, a retired Pennsylvania state trooper turned private investigator, was introduced to the case through mutual friends of the Greenbergs. At their first meeting, Thomas asked what materials the family had. They showed him the autopsy report and a file of crime scene photos, though they admitted they had never reviewed the images themselves. When Thomas began examining the materials, several things stood out immediately. One major red flag: in the autopsy photos, a trail of dried blood appeared to run sideways across Ellen's cheek to her ear, a direction inconsistent with the seated upright position in which her body had been found. To Thomas, this suggested the possibility that the body may have been moved. The official report noted Ellen had no defensive wounds on her hands or arms. Her torso was still warm and her hands were cold to the touch. Her face was covered in Investigators originally concluded these findings were consistent with the scene as discovered. The autopsy also documented multiple bruises on Ellen's body, noted to be in various stages of healing. However, these did not factor into the official ruling. At the time of her death, Ellen had been prescribed Klonopin, an anti-anxiety medication, and Ambien, a sleep aid. According to records, Ellen had attended 3 appointments with a psychiatrist. She reported feeling of anxiety and stress, but did not report any abuse or issues in her relationship. When asked about her fiancé Sam, she allegedly smiled and described him positively. Guy D'Andrea was working at the district attorney's office when he was asked to review the records of Ellen Greenberg's case on behalf of her family. All he initially knew was that Ellen had suffered 20 stab wounds, yet the official conclusion stated that the injuries were self-inflicted. To him, this didn't add up. He began digging into 3 main sets of files: the medical examiner's records, the district attorney's case files, and the homicide investigations records. Piece by piece, he started building his own file for the case. From the beginning, Guy said the case felt wrong. He started talking to Thomas, who requested access to the 911 call made on the day Ellen was found. When Thomas finally listened to the call weeks later, he was shocked by what he heard. In the recording, Sam, Ellen's fiance, is frantic. He explains that he had gone downstairs to work out, and when he returned, the door to their apartment was latched. Ellen wasn't answering, so after about 30 minutes, he broke the door down and found her on the floor, bleeding and unresponsive. When the dispatcher asked if Ellen was breathing, Sam said he didn't think so. The operator guided him through CPR instructions, telling him to place Ellen flat on her back and remove her shirt. Sam struggled with the zipper, but then exclaimed in horror, realizing the knife was still embedded. Guy, who had listened to thousands of 911 calls, said he had never heard anything like it. Witnesses reported that Sam was visibly upset, crying in the hallway and eager to cooperate with homicide detectives. Ellen's close friend Allison said that after Ellen started dating Sam, she saw her less often. Ellen was spending more time with Sam's family, and even after Sam and Ellen's engagement, she didn't share her own wedding plans with Allison. Coworkers noted Ellen often didn't wear her engagement ring toward the end of their relationship, offering excuses when asked. Notably, Ellen was not wearing her ring when her body was found. During police interviews, Sam was asked why Ellen wasn't wearing her engagement ring that night. He said he assumed it was because she didn't wear it to school. He also claimed there were no domestic issues and no past attempts or expressions of self-harm from Ellen. However, he mentioned that in January she seemed more depressed than he had ever seen her, and that she had asked him if he would still love her if she was crazy. Ellen's death initially received little attention in 2011, as the city of Philadelphia was dealing with over 300 homicides that year. The police ruled her death as self-inflicted, and few questioned that finding. 4 years later, Thomas reached out to several journalists to bring renewed attention to the case. Only reporter Stephanie Farr responded. She described the case as unusual and unforgettable. During her investigation, Stephanie contacted the district attorney's office, who referred her to the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office. The office confirmed the case was under review. Stephanie also interviewed 2 Philadelphia police investigators who were on Ellen's case. They maintained that the death was self-inflicted, citing that the door was locked and broken from the outside, the apartment undisturbed, and no defensive wounds on Ellen. Initially, the scene was not treated as a homicide that night, but they had to go back and reinvestigate year of reporting, Stephanie followed up with the Attorney General's office, which had been also reviewing the case for over a year. She described the conversation as contentious. Officials told her that their investigation found internet searches on Ellen's computer for phrases related to ending one's life, which they said supported their original conclusion. Stephanie questioned why these searches were absent from the original medical examiner's report and the police files. She also questioned why Guy DeAndrea didn't see these searches in the case file either. The Attorney General's office claimed these searches came from files Guy had reviewed, a claim he disputes. One surprising aspect of the Attorney General's office relying heavily on the internet searches found on Ellen's computer and phone is this. These devices were taken from the apartment before the official homicide investigation even began. This means the chain of custody was broken, casting doubt on the integrity of any digital evidence. Search histories can be deleted or altered, files can disappear, and it's possible to add or manipulate search records, even with backdated timestamps if you know how. For the highest law enforcement office in Pennsylvania to place so much weight on these searches was unexpected, to say the least, especially to reporter Stephanie Farr. Stephanie's detailed article unraveled the complex investigation, presenting a clear roadmap of the case's many nuances. For the first time, readers heard directly from police, the medical examiner's office, and learned about the inconsistencies and unusual explanations from official sources. The article drew massive attention, sparking widespread discussion on social media, inspiring emails from readers, and resonating deeply within the true crime community. Ellen's story suddenly made national headlines, appearing on numerous shows and news outlets. Just months later, attorney Joe Pedraza took up the case and filed a lawsuit demanding the city to change the official manner of death from self-inflicted back to either homicide or undetermined. One accepted fact among investigators was that Ellen's death occurred between 4:50 p.m. and 5:27 p.m. Guy DeAndrea suspects this timeline was chosen because Sam Goldberg was believed to have left the apartment at 4:50 p.m. They also knew Ellen wasn't home before 1:42 p.m. as she was seen getting gas at 1:26 p.m. Guy found it odd that Ellen would fill up her gas tank if she was planning to take her own life later that evening, but some argue that decisions like this are often made in a very short window between thought and action. To get a clearer picture, Thomas, one of the homicide investigators and a forensic expert, Dr. DeMichelle, returned to apartment 603 where Ellen and Sam lived. They recreated the scene, analyzing evidence overlooked in earlier reports. While official reports described no sign of struggle, the three of them noted the knife block was turned over, knives scattered, and that any struggle would have been confined to a small area because the kitchen itself was small where this scene took place, meaning a violent altercation could have occurred and it wouldn't look like, the overturning of furniture or things along that line. Dr. DeMichelle also reviewed the autopsy photos and found evidence of injury to the neck's strap muscles, typically associated with manual strangulation, despite the original autopsy report describing the neck as pristine. Her findings aligned with those of another forensic pathologist commissioned by the Greenberg family. She emphasized that absence of obvious bruises or fingerprints on the neck does not rule out strangulation. Digital records show Ellen's last computer activity was at 4:46 p.m. At 4:50 p.m., CCTV footage shows Sam leaving for the gym. 37 minutes later, he is seen returning to the elevator bay, and then an avalanche of frantic texting calls to Ellen begins. Sam starts texting at 5:32 p.m., "Hello," with a bunch of exclamations, followed seconds later by "Open the door." Then, "What are you doing?" Another, "You better have an excuse." Another, "What the F?" Another, "Ah," with a bunch of exclamations. And finally, "You have no idea." Sam told investigators he had been trying to get into the apartment for nearly an hour. When asked why Ellen hadn't responded, he guessed she was showering, doing her hair, or working with headphones on. Video footage shows Sam entering the elevator at 6:28 p.m., followed by the 911 call at 6:30 p.m. Joe Pedraza requested the medical examiner's office voluntarily change the cause of death from self-inflicted to homicide, but they ended up prompting another lawsuit. This lawsuit forced the city to release surveillance footage from the apartment complex, which had between 12 and 20 cameras. Initially, police claimed no such footage existed. Only after legal pressure and threats of court orders did the city admit to having the tapes. The footage was critical because the medical examiner's report stated that a security guard had escorted and witnessed Sam breaking into the apartment when he found Ellen, but the video disproved that. Sam entered alone with no escort. Sam never mentioned anyone accompanying him in his police interviews, yet the medical examiner's report included this inaccurate detail and used it to support the self-inflicted ruling. Joe realized something was seriously wrong. Police had reviewed this footage but failed to identify the discrepancy. With the footage in hand, Joe began depositions. In one deposition, Dr. Sam Galino, the chief medical examiner, said he first heard of the case when invited to a meeting with Philadelphia police, the district attorney's office, and Dr. Osborne, the original medical examiner. The meeting was to discuss new investigative information. Dr. Osborne, in his deposition, said he had not considered changing the manner of death before this meeting. Joe believes that during this meeting, information was shared that convinced Dr. Osborne to change the ruling from homicide to self-inflicted. Dr. Osborne had indicated that at the meeting, it was shared with him that Sam had been witnessed entering the apartment when he found Ellen. No notes were taken during this meeting, and those present couldn't remember exactly what was said, making the reasons for the change unclear. Dr. Osborne explained that at the time of the autopsy, he believed there was enough evidence to call it homicide. When asked if unresolved questions about the fiance's presence or the locked doors would have changed his opinion, he said it would have led more towards an undetermined ruling instead, but this wasn't the case. The final deposition was of Dr. Emery, a neuropathologist who joined the medical examiner's office years after Ellen's autopsy. She was asked to review whether damage to Ellen's spinal cord could have affected her ability to inflict the wounds. Dr. Emery said there were three possibilities. One, the stab wound pierced the protective layer around the spinal cord, but did not go deeper, possibly numbing Ellen, but still allowing movement. Two, the wounds were inflicted at very close range after death, meaning there was no physical reaction. Or three, the apparent spinal cord damage was accidental, caused during the autopsy itself, a post-mortem artifact. One striking finding was that a stab wound may have occurred before jury selection, Joe contacted Dr. Osborne's legal counsel, indicating they were willing to settle if Dr. Osborne would admit that Ellen's death was not self-inflicted. The settlement broke in the media. In a sworn court statement, Dr. Osborne declared, "Since issuing the amended death certificate, I have become aware of additional information. It is my professional opinion that Ellen's manner of death should be designated as something other than self-inflicted." Following this, Philadelphia agreed to settle both lawsuits and reopen the investigation. But 2.5 months after settlement, Ellen's father, Josh, said the city had yet to review the case or take action. Ellen's mother, Sandy, warned that if the autopsy file wasn't examined soon, they would have to go back to court to enforce it. On September 3rd, 2025, a judge criticized the city of Philadelphia for delaying justice, saying justice delayed is justice denied, and demanding an expeditious review. The medical examiner's office is scheduled to present its re-examination findings